Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very, very much for joining us. I believe this is SAAS Lounge 12. So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening in. We are today talking about women in venture capital. Now, we all know that the role of women in venture capital has been evolving, and there have been several interesting trends in recent years, highlighting the progress and challenges faced by women. One of the things I would like to point out, though, to start with, the main trend, I'm going to put this out there first, which is that women-led ventures are showing higher returns. Better performance matrix research indicated by BCG found that women-led startups generate twice as much revenue per dollar invested than male-founded startups. Yes, Cyril, that is true. Also, higher return on investment for female VCs. A first round capital study found that companies with female founder performed 63% better than their male-only counterparts when it came to ROI, and that's just the beginning. Now, there are some trends, of course, that need to improve. We know that the number of women holding leadership roles, such as general partners in venture capital, has increased over the past decade. According to PitchBook, in 2022, women represented about 15.4% of general partners in US venture capital firms, and that was up from just 7% in 2017. So from 7 to 15%. So look, there are challenges. I should introduce myself very briefly. I'm Mark Walter. I'm a partner in strategic communications firm Hudson Sandler, based in London. Among many things, we specialize in helping clients raise capital, preparing their profiles and ensuring the markets, investors, and potential investors recognize their success with higher valuations. Now, I'm going to ask all of you to introduce yourselves, please. If I start with the top left on my screen with Cyril.
Thanks, Mark. Nice to meet you all, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cyril Golub. I'm from Latvia, and currently I'm a chairman of the Latvian Business Angels Network and also a representative of Latvia in the European Business Angels Network Board of Directors. I must say that women in venture capital is one of the most exciting topics, and I'm really eager to learn more and to share my experience with you and with our audience.
Wonderful, wonderful. And how about Magda?
Hello, I'm legal director at Flashpoint. Welcome, everyone. I'm also happy that I can represent women factor in the VC market from more of the operational and legal perspective. Thanks.
And also joining this elite crew is Małgorzata. Margaret.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, actually. I represent PFR Ventures, which is a venturing arm of Polish Development Fund, one of the biggest institutional investor in Poland, and I think at the moment only one. I'm also eager to share my views, and they're completely different than yours, but happy to join, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. We're also blessed to have Elena Majua. Elena, please.
Hi, everyone. I am one of the partners at Fly1 Ventures. We invest at early stages, usually pre-seed and seed stages, in the founders from the CE building successful international companies on the global markets. I'm personally mostly focused right now on the enterprise software spaces and everything related to so-called automation of boring industries, which is not usually, very... I don't need to deal with a lot of female founders, unfortunately, in the spaces, but I hope it's going to change in the near future.
And last but by no means least, Persia Georgiadou, please.
Hi, and thanks for having me today. So I'm an investor with Flashpoint, and we are primarily investing Series A rounds, primarily backing founders across Europe and Israel that are building global businesses.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. I'm going to start, if that's okay, with a question, and please, I can ask whichever one of you to answer. But if anybody has specific enthusiasm to answer first, please do so. I'm wondering, what role do you guys think gender has or hasn't played in the development of your careers? Firstly, has it played a role at all, or in fact, do you see that it's been either a catalyst or a hurdle? So I'm looking for the first participant. Perhaps from an investor perspective, maybe Elena, actually, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I think that the influence was quite big. I think like I like to, you know, underappreciate it sometimes because I don't want to put every responsibility for the gender that I was born in and have no role in. But at the same time, I think that it made me a little bit louder and a little bit more pushy and, you know, a little bit more let's say visible on the market, because in most cases the majority of candidates were usually guys, and I need to compete with quite a lot of them when I was applying to different jobs. And that's why it made me sometimes more visible, just because I was sometimes maybe the only woman in the room, or sometimes there were only like two of us and the rest were the guys. So I'm not saying that it's a good thing to be like, you know, super visible because of your gender, but at the same time, it surely helps if you want to be remembered by your future employer.
Indeed. Magda, Persia, or Margaret, is there anything you want to add here?
Well, from my perspective, gender unfortunately does matter. And in my whole career, apart from maybe one institution, which is United Nations, where I started, and I think it was beautiful, but at the same time, it was very comfortable environment, because the issue, the gender issue was I encountered was only, you know, in the papers, in the documents, in the presentations. Then I moved to business, and I was shocked how gender, and not only in Poland, but also in Europe, in Eastern Europe, in Western Europe, everywhere, was an issue. So, and for me, what is the problem is not that it used to be issue and now it's better. The progress is very low. So even if you look at all the reports regarding the partners, managing partners, and women in power in venture capital world, it's almost plateau. There is no significant increase in how many women got promoted. So for me, the biggest problem is lack of development than the situation, because the situation which I encounter since very beginning is the same. So I'm happy that we are meeting today, and I'm happy that Elena and Persia, I know Magda very well because we used to work together, and Magda knows my opinions. I'm supporting women, and you know, doesn't matter the age or the background or track record. I think that unfortunately we need more support from other women with more experience than men. So unfortunately, the gender is an issue, and it does matter.
Well, it needs to be reflective of society, right? And at the moment, it's not. If you look at, you know, women-founded startups accounted for 2% or less of venture capital funding in Europe and US in 2023, according to PitchBook. Magda or Persia, is there anything you want to say here?
Go ahead, Magda.
Thank you. As Małgorzata mentioned, we used to work together. I also have a chance to work now with Persia on a daily basis. To be frank, I actually either I'm not aware of the fact that my gender played any role in any previous or current job that I have, or it didn't matter. Actually, I haven't experienced any questions with respect to either my future plans or my personal situation or anything related to the gender. And I must say, having me, maybe that's a stereotype, but having me actually engaged in the corporate department of the law firm. This is where I started, or been responsible for the negotiations processes or launching the funds. So you can see that these are the places where the engagement is pretty high, notwithstanding the gender. Could mean that I'm not as suitable, right, because of my gender, but yet I have managed to actually find an employment in these areas, which were from the very beginning interesting to me. I actually have decided at the beginning of my career, after I finished the university, that I kind of want to be among the business world, and I want to be a part of this, like a big table. And I've never seen myself or my gender as any type of factor. I remember that a few jobs ago, I actually spoken to one of the managing partners of the firm, and he told me, Magda, be aware that this is like a man's club. And you can say that in a way it is, because in the most of the rooms you have 99% of the guys in front of you. Not only because as a lawyer I participate in the negotiations, so you can see challenging environment for the women who are also lawyers. That's why you may have less women out there, but also because of the funders or the VC partners, there are less women out there. I haven't experienced that this is something what would be difficult to me and challenging to me. However, this is the fact that when I enter the room or when I join the call, I'm basically alone there as a woman. I don't think about it at the moment, but there is like reflection afterwards that this is something what is a rule, right? It's, even though the data that you have presented at the beginning shows that there is a difference, but it's, as Małgorzata mentioned, it's a difference almost non-existing from the daily perspective, unfortunately.
Persia, if you don't mind, in terms of your gender, do you feel it's been a tailwind or a headwind?
I want to say tailwind for many reasons, right? But I overall agree with both sides and what the ladies mentioned earlier, and I feel I'm sitting somewhere between, in the sense that when you try and reach out and you do lead generation on the investor side, it's good to be the one that stands out in the sense from the gender perspective. So usually people remember you, and it's easier in a sense to build connections and communications. On the other hand, yes, like there are like stereotypes out there, and I personally also felt it to a certain extent, but I wouldn't say this kept me back in any certain or possible way. I would say makes me like push more and eventually get where I have to or want to get to.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if that's answer your question to generate.
Yeah, no,
but,
it really has. It's interesting to have an initial perspective from you all. And I am, on that note, going to ask Cyril about the Latvian Business Angels Network. And actually, I'm going to be mean, Cyril. I'm going to ask you what proportion of your members are female? Do you know?
That's a quite interesting question, because I do. And I do know not only about the Latvian Business Angels Network. I'm actively involved in a lot of angel groups Eastern Europe. And I must say, surprisingly, the number of women who are members of such kind of angels communities and networks are very, very similar. Doesn't matter in what country we're talking about, from 7 to 10%. And this number do not change depending on, nevertheless, but the case when we have extremely women-specific angels group. You know that in Europe there are at least 3, probably even more groups where all the members are intentionally women. Vice versa, on the other hand, I must say that the leadership in the most angel groups and communities belongs to women. Just for example, our friends and closest neighbors, Lithuania, managing director, 2 board directors out of 5 or 6, FIBAN, where the leadership still belongs and will belong to women, Estonian Business Angels Network as well. But from my perspective, I must say that specifically for me, gender question is not a question. Venture capital is first a business. And let's say if I'm forming the negotiating team, the main point is how we can feel all the necessary skills during the upcoming negotiations. And talking about stereotypes, some may say that women are a bit more emotional and men are more about numbers. Trust me, in my experience, in all and each and every negotiations I saw when the women and men are mixed in the negotiation teams, in all cases, men making more emotional decisions and women are much more attentive and let's say put a lot of meaningful questions about numbers. So if I can choose in my negotiation team, it is always a place for at least one woman. That's my point.
So we will talk about culture later on, because in terms of developing a startup, culture is of course critical, and I think that the balance between meritocracy and gender balance is critical. So look, again, I'm going to repeat those killer statistics. Boston Consulting saying that women-led startups generate twice as much revenue per dollar invested, 78 cents per dollar versus 31. An ROI for female VCs, female founders, generates 63% better ROIs. Why do we think this is? Has Cyril already answered that question? So who wants to chip in here? Margaret?
I know why, because if you take just the top of the iceberg, and you have best of the best probably. So you have to be twice as good, or I don't know, 10 times as good as your competitor in a male environment, and you probably have the top of the top. I myself, actually, I don't think that women are better in anything. They're just different. But I would be very surprised to see any scientific proof that women are better leaders, or women are better in terms of founders, or women are better in terms of coaches. Women are better as mother probably, and men are better than as fathers. This I could, sign under. But I don't agree generally with this kind of assumptions, because I think that if you want to do the assumptions, you have to compare apples with apples, right? So not to be, because this also exposes the gender, because if we say, oh, women are better in this and that, because this I hear very often, and I don't agree, right? We are equal. We are equal. We are the same. We are not maybe the same, but we are equally good. We are different because of the different experience, different type of, as Cyril said, right? There are some stereotypes, but also, scientifically it's proved that we are different. That's why we are women, right? We have more capacity in terms of emotional intelligence. We can be more, we can be better in terms of difficult negotiation, because there is much more like conciliation from our side. But we are not better or worse in terms of these factors of, you know, managerial skills or something like that. And I would love to, you know, promote this kind of message to everybody, that actually this is what I'm fighting for, and this is what women are fighting for, to be treated equally. That doesn't matter, you know, that we get pregnant and we can give the birth. This should be an advantage, and this is in many countries still disadvantages of young women. So this is what I experience, right? But comparing to the data, as I said, if you take the top of the ice mountain, probably you will have best of the best, and probably statistically, you know, this percentage, this is not representation, a real representation. This is what I think.
I think that makes me feel happy and sad, Margaret. I think what particularly sad, I think, is as a father of a 10-year-old girl, that she has to work 10 times harder to achieve more than her male colleagues, is something that by the time she's 22 and plus and graduating, I hope won't be the case. I would love to hear, Elena, what your strongest attribute is. What do you bring to the table? And it would be interesting to see if we think that's because of your gender or something else. What do you bring to the table? What's your strongest attribute?
I would say that probably my colleagues try to call me sometimes like a networking ninja, because for some reason I just meet very random, very famous people sometimes, and we just talk about something, and they end up doing some kind of like a workshop for our founders or something like that, which is sometimes like it truly happens sometimes very randomly, because we had this conversation with Harry Stebbings from 20VC some time ago for the founders from the CE, and a lot of my friends tried to reach out to him, and he actually accepted the invitation and whatever, and he was, you know, not answering them. He read the messages and he just missed them. In my case, I randomly messaged him once. I received one answer from him, like, can you write shorter? I wrote him a very short message, and he said, oh yeah, fine, I will join the workshop. And I was like, what did I do? Like, why did that happen even? But this one, and probably the PR thing, like personal branding PR thing, so I can sometimes I have this conversations with different founders or aspiring VCs, that how you can make yourself more visible in the social media, in media in general, how you can get some speaking spots in different events, and I think that I can actually consult on that pretty well, because I have quite a lot of experience with that. I was doing that a little bit like on the part-time basis before I joined the fund. Then in our fund, I built our PR team, and then I hired the whole PR team, and then I left the PR team like a year ago probably, and currently it has a different manager, but I'm still like in my core, I'm still a little bit a PR person, because I do understand how the different media platforms work and what people actually like. So I would say that these are probably my two core skills that I usually bring to the table.
So that implies then empathy and emotional intelligence. You know, look, there are some unfortunate generalizations one could make about why you were successful in reaching out to these
don't make this assumption.
But I think it's empathy and emotional intelligence, and maybe a desire to go and get out there. So what
actually
about...
on the empathy, I would like to add that what a lot of people do not usually do, and this is a very basic mistake, is that when you want to reach out to somebody directly, you need to do some research on this person. So just read like 20, 30, 50 posts of this person and just trying to understand what they are interested in, not as a professional, but just in general, and try to use the wording that would, click with them. And afterwards you will probably get an answer. And some people just don't do that. They don't even, look into one's LinkedIn page. So that's why I think that's one thing that everybody can do.
Well, it's not
This
a
is very
volume game,
analytical,
right?
actually. This is very analytical.
Exactly.
It's a good analysis. But Mark, what you said about your daughter, referring to that, my daughter is 13 years old. And I think that one more statement, which I read recently, there was a comparison between salaries in Europe, women and men, right? And there is differences, there is discrepancies around between 20, up to even 30%. But if you really dig deeper, you will learn that it's again not apples with apples comparison, because you have all the jobs, right? So it's not categorized like engineers, professors, like academic jobs, etc. Everything is in one bucket. It's just the gender, men and women. And if you take the data, if you compare women engineers and men engineers, I actually found out, because I'm from engineer family, that women engineers have higher salaries, even up to 10%. So this astonished me, because this is again the stereotypes. Each hypothesis you can, for each hypothesis you can find some maybe not facts, right? If it depends on how you look at them. But if you want to be very, very frank, you can really understand what is the background. And building on that, the problem I think is that it should start from parents and from the households and from the family, because we are bringing up girls in this manner. I was bringing up. I was in an engineer family. I loved maths, and I could calculate, the height of the bridge when I was 8, right? But it's because I was looking what my father and my mother was doing. But many of my friends were going only, for like theater, acting, drama school, history, maybe some piano music schools, because it was appropriate for girls to finish a certain amount of courses, etc., etc. Of course, it was like 30 years ago, right? So now new generation. Each generation needs a role modeling, but I see that it's changing a little bit. But it should change from us, from the parents who help very young population to show that she can also be an engineer, that she can go for a math course, that she can develop her skills not only in the art school, but also in Polytechnic, Warsaw Polytechnic, or any other technical university. This is something I think is a bit missing. And we cannot blame, the society, because this is us who are actually starting the journey for females.
That's right, exactly right. There are two, I'd like to continue the discussion in terms of perceptions and maybe attributes. Okay, so perceptions about women and attributes. But before I do that, there's a question from the audience. We can go local, but he said, the question is, what are the unique challenges or barriers that you've faced as women entrepreneurs in Latvia or wherever I suppose you are, Poland, when accessing venture capital, and how do you think these barriers have compared to what you've observed in other ecosystems, like in New York as an example? So is there a regional difference, a continental difference? I don't know who would be the best to answer this.
May I start, because Latvia was mentioned?
Yeah.
First of all, I see no reason. I see no difference, let's say, for the local businesses in accessing venture capital, despite the gender. And it doesn't matter whose gender, the entrepreneur or venture capitalists or someone else. Just a brief example, the Latvian Venture Capital Association is led by women, managed by women, so I hardly can imagine the situation when the gender will be the differentiator for any kind of solution or decision whether to invest to or not invest. But I must say that I'm not very familiar with the ecosystem in the East Coast rather than West Coast in the United States. So probably there is a difference. But here in Central and Eastern Europe, I see nothing special here.
Has anyone had any experience, Magda, perhaps, more international or West Coast?
Not my personal. However, I have read some papers regarding the Silicon Valley and possibilities of women or women funders to basically either attend the same type of events as the men do, or to network in the same manner. I hope it has changed over the years and we got more professional. This is something what I actually look for in the working environment. I always wanted to be surrounded by the professional people, notwithstanding the gender or some other factors which are basically independent from the person. However, you can see that especially in such business-oriented market with such investments going on all the time, with the higher bids and so on and so forth, you need to compete. And you not only compete via your professionalism or your best idea and so on and so forth, you sometimes compete by some personal aspects or non-professional skills. And women may be better in building relationships or they perceived as such. However, we won't be able to go sauna or like swimming pool party with men who are seeking there for some you can imagine one type adventure. So this is something what I know that used to happen. I hope that this is changing, and thanks to the fact that we as a society globally change. I know that my colleagues, when I share with them my observations about gender equality, about women in the work environment, they ask whether something what they do, what they say is comfortable to me, because they understand this is important. So I believe that we also understand that building the business should be based on like real facts, not only your ability to join this or that type of club, right? So but this is the US. This is a bit different market. I think that in Europe, we here actually, I don't see any differences in this respect. It's also about how open the society is in itself, right? So if we don't see limits within ourselves, like why should I think that, okay, I'm a woman, I cannot get this money, I cannot open this startup, I cannot like join the fund and so on and so forth, right? At least I know that the more examples of such activity are present on the market, it's also more encouraging for women to seek for it, to seek for a chance. But as Małgorzata mentioned, like maybe that starts with the parents. I have two brothers, and I played with them football when I was a kid. Like there was no question about my ability to kick the ball. I was the worst, obviously, but not because of my gender. I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to do some other stuff. But like it wasn't the question whether I am capable of doing so as a woman. So I always was surrounded by by people who basically see no difference in me as a woman comparing to the guys, and see no limitations. I am extremely proud when I see so many successful women-led startups. I'm actually happy that we see what are we the best at, and we want to basically follow that path. I hope that I will see more examples of such on the market.
So I think, look, unless Elena, Persia, Margaret want to chip in, generally I think we can't really generalize by demographic, by geography. One of the things that Hudson Sandler did extremely successfully in the last 12, 18 months, and maybe we were a bit behind the curve on this actually, but we decided that our success as leaders in the business, we would rather look at things in terms of qualities. And attributes, personal attributes, and how we learn to communicate with each other to get the best out of each other. And so we all undertook essentially psychological tests to work out the makeup of us as individuals, what makes us tick, what doesn't make us tick, and how to communicate with us. And that was far more effective than forcing anything else. So we're a well-rounded team regardless of background. I think this is something that we've learned. I want to thank Dennis, who's listening, who has kindly asked some questions. Now Dennis is a founder of the Robotech Frontier Hub. And he's also given me some additional statistics saying that women-owned businesses generate $1.8 trillion annually and make up 40% of US businesses. Male-owned businesses outnumber women-owned by 3 times. So there's huge potential. Shall we move on then? I would like to get into some more specific attributes, despite what I just said about qualities. Let's look at perhaps approaches to risk assessment. Perhaps, if we believe, in fact, that men are more emotional, when it comes to risk assessment, are women better at assessing risks? Who wants to take this one? Cyril.
May I start, please? I'm strictly sure, and that's my strong point, that women are paying much more attention to potential risks, and women are much more willing to, let's say, mitigate the risks as much as possible. But in speaking about the venture capital, without losing the potential upside. Because for men, it is much more typical saying that, okay, this risk is possible, but we can for now skip it, and probably back to this question a bit later. Let's focus on the potential upside, where the women have much more balanced approach. Everywhere in the venture capital, I saw it, starting from the ultra early stage deals on the, let's say, very first money, not even from business angels, but from 3F, and then getting up to Series A. Unfortunately, I never saw and participated in the deals in a more mature stage, but up to Series A, it's completely typical as I saw it.
Maybe I can add on this. Like, personally, I wouldn't say there is a difference in risk assessment or whether women or men have less or more risk appetite. But maybe, yeah, and I will agree with what has been said earlier, that sometimes we tend to have a more analytical thinking, more structured way in a sense. And maybe that's one of the reasons that sometimes could do a more thorough due diligence, maybe try and find mitigants and present them in a bit different way, presenting all the facts and have a bit more like analytical way to assess and categorize different things. But again, I don't want to sound stereotype. I think it might also depend on a person by person basis, not necessarily on the gender. But yeah, that would be that's what I personally I countered and thought.
I would like to add to this that so it was mentioned before during our conversation that sometimes to make it in, let's say, venture capital, to make it as a founder, if you're a woman, you need to be kind of better than everybody else to stand out, and you need to work sometimes harder, you need to push harder, you need to be more neurotic about different things that you're doing, because you need to care about your reputation and other things and how you look like and the personal brand and other things like that. And that's why I think that it probably also influences the perception of risk, because sometimes when probably because of these traits, you also think about the same things when you are making some kind of investment. Maybe you obsess over, like, have I considered everything? Have I enough conviction? Like, is my conviction even enough in this case? So that's why probably this is the problem with the risk assessment here. I say the problem because in industries like venture capital and entrepreneurship, you need to take some leaps of faith and just do something and see what happens next, because you just don't have the information, you will never get it.
Well, then let's go a little bit more blue sky then, and I will ask Margaret if she doesn't mind terribly. So, look, gender impacts us as individuals, right? So our lived experience is impacted by it. But does gender really matter from a deal-making perspective? Margaret, if you're presented with an opportunity to invest, you'll assess the business, but will the gender or potentially policies or ambitions in terms of that business's desire to rebalance its executive leadership, you know, a good gender mix, does that matter? What matters to you? Is this relevant?
I think no, the gender doesn't matter if when it comes to this kind of skills. You know, I have met many leaders, both men and women, and binary people during over my last, I don't know, 25 now years of professional career. So you either have it or you don't. It's a talent, and like in especially leadership, you can study it. I was studying it actually.
Oh, really?
But leadership, it's something you are given. You can develop it. You can work on it. You can, in a decent way, expand it. But but this is something you either have or not, and it doesn't matter what the gender you have. What I see in some of these institutions is that I can see leadership among women, and I can see authority among men. So there are organizations and institutions which, unfortunately, I'm talking now about Poland, recognizes male factor as the one which would be more stable, etc., etc. It has changed a little bit recently, especially when we look at the ministerial level in the governments. But in the state-owned companies, it's again the same. If you look at the pictures which are taken on the conferences, and I would give anything to not be right now. But if you take the pictures from the, let's just shoot from like January till August or September. There will be only few pictures when you can find more than one woman, and usually she's a moderator and she's not a panelist. So these are the facts, right? This is something we have to, I think, as a society, to work more on it. And it's not, I am not blaming anybody. I just want to work on it. I want to be more inclusive because I believe, and this is my experience, that having diversity among partners, among the decision-making people, helping us, helping the countries, helping the businesses, and helping all the organizations, including the families, to grow. So this is my only aim. I'm not the person who would go and say that because I'm a woman I'm better. No, I'm not better. I'm equal.
You said something extraordinarily interesting just now. It might have been a semantic slip, but you said leadership and not authority, that women bring leadership and men bring authority. Was that a slip, or did you mean to say that?
No, this is what I notice in many organizations, that I can see the leaders among women, and they're not the CEOs, they are not the managing partners, they are not nobody will given them authority, but still they are leaders. So they have a huge impact on the work environment, on the teams. And they were not given, the authority, because you can have respect to authority. Like for me, it's the police or the president of the company who was nominated by other third parties, right? I'm not talking about the private company, about the CEO who actually grew, who is the owner and the entrepreneur. I'm talking about institutions where the positions are given. Right, somebody was chosen among others during the competition, or just chosen, in different ways. And I can what I can see very often is that I can see the presidents. I'm sorry, my kids coming back from school. So I can see, what I mean, the authorities which are given, and sometimes the president is the leader. It doesn't matter if it's woman or man, but sometimes what I can see is that the authority is not in line with leadership. This is what I can observe. And it's not recognized yet, and I hope this will be recognized. That really this is something very important, and this is a talent. So it should be recognized. Simple as that.
So we've had an extraordinarily interesting comment from Olyana Gordienko, who's a corporate governance expert, and she's disappointed, I think, by how stereotypical this conversation has evolved. I think in the very beginning we said, didn't we? I think we concluded very quickly that gender doesn't matter. It's actually more about the type of personality you are. Rather than coming from stereotypical backgrounds, whatever, it's what your capabilities are. So Olyana, I think we fully do agree with you. What I would like to ask is whether or not, and I'm sorry, Margaret, I am going to come to you again. I'll go to Elena as well, but Margaret, do you have inclusion or diversity targets for your investees?
Yes, we do.
Are you happy to elaborate?
Yes. So what we are doing is we are looking for when we are choosing the teams, the GPs. We are asking the key personnel about the diversity, and we are including the ESG components in it. And what we are doing, we don't demand GPs to hire female as a partner from the first day, but we would like to know what is the path of the career for women who are already employed, or what are the ideas about how it can be included in the team, in the partnership in the future. So this is what we are looking at from the ESG angle.
Understood. Elena, are there any objectives from your organization you'd like to highlight?
We have, I think it's 50-50 approximately right now in terms of men and women on the team. Our general partner is a man, but basically he's a founding partner, so it's it's nothing that you can change. Like, he founded the fund. that's it.
Exactly.
But at the same time, our leadership team consists of 3 female personnel and 3 men. So this is something that it wasn't like a quota or whatever. It just happened. Like, we have a pretty good network, which is very diverse. In terms of investments, we have, I think, 15 to 20% of our portfolio companies have one of the founders, at least one of the founders, a woman, which is also nice. It wasn't also a quota, but we just paid attention to the companies that have a female founder or co-founder, and just, in some cases, these were very talented people, so that's why we invested in those companies. But I believe that, like in my case, for example, I have a small team in the fund, and I was trying to hire women multiple times so far. Like, I have this like internship program, and every year currently we take at least one intern per half a year. And last time when I was hiring, so we basically shared this message about the vacancy into different communities. And some of these communities, for example, like university-related communities, they were almost 50% like male and female. And I received like probably less than 5% of the applications were from girls. And some of them I needed to approach proactively and ask them, why didn't you apply? Like, have you seen the vacancy? And she said, yeah, I've seen it. Why didn't you apply? Because I didn't think that I have enough skill set, I didn't have the skills. And I was like, whatever, like, come on, you will learn. Like, let's do this, please. So so it's, sometimes, I don't know, it just happened this way. I'm still kind of, fighting for that, and I will still be looking into a lot of female resumes and CVs, and talk to a lot of girls who want to join venture capital, and maybe even proactively approach people. But in our case, somehow for now it happened quite naturally, and I hope that this balance that exists currently in our fund, it is like a precursor of the future balance too, because quite often women can hire other women into the team, quite often men can hire other men, and it's just how the world works. I'm not saying that there is no friendship between like men and women, but it's just more natural to have to have the friends of the same gender, because you just have the similar topics to talk about, and that's it. Like, you meet in the same communities. So that's why how it happens. And this is probably one of the like curses of venture capital, because this is a very network driven profession, and that's why sometimes when you don't have women on your team, you can end up investing only in in male only teams eventually, just because you have the network that looks like this.
Yeah.
I'm
sorry, carry on.
Yeah,
Go on,
I'd like to refer to what Elena just mentioned. Actually, I recall discussion that I had a few years ago. I also have friends who are women who are in the startups VC environment. They work there pretty actively. And we were having this discussion, which is pretty much the same and ongoing one, right? Why there are not that many women in the VC or startups environment. And actually, given that at Flashpoint, we have very open way of communication. And I recall that at the moment, we actually had an open vacant for the position in the either investment team or some other department. I don't remember that in such a detail. I asked guys, like, what's going on? Why there are not that many women in our organization? And they the response was like, we basically do not receive CVs, right, from women. And this is mostly because the perspective of this environment, of this working environment, is unfortunately not that friendly to women who, for instance, have children or have families or think about work-life balance, right? So this is something what can be also maybe an idea to to be more vocal about our flexibility. You basically everywhere can see that this is like a very flexible environment. We're open for your type of work and so on and so forth. Maybe we should start this discussion that you guys like just send out your CV, as Elena mentioned, right? Just try. Now, like I see that people, unfortunately, thanks to COVID and the fact that we somehow has been switched to remote type of work, we can better combine our work with day-to-day obligations, right? So this flexibility is kind of independent of the gender. It's also basically is something what we should be more vocal about, that this is not, maybe that's a myth, maybe that's a stereotype, that it's a not friendly environment for people for women who wants to, not only women, basically for all the people who wants to manage properly their private and business life.
So remarkably, I'm afraid we only have 3 minutes left. There are a couple of things that I would like to do. Firstly, there's a wonderful discussion happening on the forum. Dennis has replied to Oliana. Basically, Oliana was saying that women have to work harder. We've already established this earlier, haven't we? They have to, unfortunately, work harder, and that's unfair. What Dennis is saying is exactly this: that it should be an even starting point, but it isn't. It unfortunately isn't, and I think that's one of. And this brings me conveniently one of the conclusions that we want to draw. And so if I finalize quickly the 3 key takeaways I see, and you can correct me or add or whatever, I think women founders are more successful. This is a point from Margaret earlier, and they generate higher returns, fact, because you're comparing the absolute cream of female talent. There are fewer females in the industry, so you get a cream of the female potential in the industry comparing to men. Women have to work 10 times as hard. This is an unfair starting point. Also, I think it's fair to say we've agreed that it is qualities rather than gender which produces success, but we need a balance of perspectives, right? And so we all bring our different perspectives regarding, whether we're from different countries or different genders. Is there anything else that you want to leave this forum with as a thought? Who haven't we heard from very much? Persia, what have you got for us? Is there anything else?
Yeah, I think I fully agree with all the points that you mentioned. It's I think it's more of a skill set rather than the gender itself. So it's a combination of different perspectives, experiences, and skills effectively, and that's what people are looking for. Maybe we should be looking a bit more actively and proactively for more women, but that's something that we already mentioned and discussed. But I think that's the main takeaways of today's conversation.
Anybody else?
I actually may summarize, because as I mentioned, I used to work with Margaret, and now I work with Persia. They have different styles of work, but each of them leads always to a success. And I actually love working with women. I don't know how it is possible that basically so different type of people can achieve the same positive outcome, and they trust. I think that's what is important, that women trust each other, and we rely on our skills and professionalism, and this is something what I think we should also support as a highlight.
Wonderful.
Maybe just to end to this, is that probably the healthiest environment, like in the team that I've ever had, was only in the balanced and well-balanced teams in terms of gender balance. And I think that it's also important for a lot of, like, if you want to work in very non-toxic conditions, and if you want to have very interesting, talented people with different backgrounds and with very diverse views on the life, and you want to have an enriching communication on a daily basis, and you want to basically learn from your peers, you will benefit from working with a diverse team rather than, if the team is all female or all male. It's just my experience, but it was probably the best experience ever, just to work with the team is 50-50 or around that kind of proportion.
And Cyril, we are going to have to work harder, aren't we, clearly, as men, because we're going to be overtaken. We are being overtaken.
That's right.
I'd also like to thank, so look, we have Cyril from Latvian Business Angels Network, Magdalena Gałan from Flashpoint. We have the wonderful Margaret, Walczak, and please correct me, Margaret, from Polski Fundusz Rozwoju. Was that a good?
Very good. Excellent pronunciation. Thank you.
And
Very
Elena
good
from
art,
Fly
actually.
And well, in Welsh, you see, we pronounce things better than the English do. And also online, we've had some great contributions from Elena Lamova, HR and IT outsourcing manager from Mobility Europe, in addition to Dennis, as I mentioned earlier. So thank you all very much for your time. That was tremendous fun, and I think the future looks very bright in your hands. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.